Have you ever wondered why some people seem to have stable energy all day, lose fat more easily, stay mentally sharp, and rarely experience those dramatic energy crashes that leave them exhausted, hungry, and irritable by the afternoon? What if I told you that the answer may have far less to do with eating less and exercising harder than you think, and far more to do with whether your body has forgotten how to use one of the most powerful fuel sources it already has, stored inside? Right now, even while you're sitting and watching this, your body is constantly producing energy. Every heartbeat, every thought, every movement of your muscles, every repair happening inside your organs requires fuel. But here's the fascinating part. Your body actually has two major fuel systems. One depends heavily on sugar or glucose, while the other relies on fat. And when your body becomes efficient at using fat for energy, something remarkable begins to happen. Energy levels become steadier. Hunger often feels easier to control. Fat storage becomes less aggressive. Hormones may function more smoothly. And for many people, it becomes dramatically easier to stop feeling trapped by constant cravings and exhaustion. But if our bodies are designed to burn fat, why do so many people struggle to access it? Why do millions of people feel tired despite carrying large amounts of stored energy in the form of body fat? Why does weight loss feel impossible for some, even when they are trying hard? And perhaps most importantly, what is actually happening inside your body when fat is burned for fuel? Today, we're going to uncover exactly how fat burning works, what prevents many people from accessing this system, and the hidden obstacles that may be silently keeping you stuck in a cycle of low energy, stubborn body fat, and metabolic frustration. To understand fat burning, we first need to understand something extremely important about how your body handles food. Every time you eat, your body begins transforming nutrients into usable energy. In a typical modern diet, sugars and carbohydrates are quickly broken down into glucose. This glucose becomes one of your body's preferred energy sources because it is fast and easy to use. Your cells, especially in the muscles and liver, absorb glucose and either use it immediately or store it for later. But here's where things become more interesting. Your body can only store a limited amount of sugar. Once those storage systems begin to fill up, any excess energy has to go somewhere. And in many cases, that somewhere becomes fat tissue. Your body essentially says, we may need this energy later, and stores it away for a future survival. From an evolutionary perspective, this was brilliant. For most of human history, food scarcity was normal. Storing extra energy meant survival during periods of famine. The problem is that modern life rarely creates true scarcity. Food is everywhere, often available 24 hours a day. And many of the foods we consume are specifically engineered to keep us eating more. Now let's talk about fat itself, because there's a huge misunderstanding here. Fat isn't just something sitting passively on your waistline doing nothing. Fat is stored energy. In fact, it is one of the most powerful energy reserves the human body possesses. When your body needs energy and sugar becomes less available, it can begin mobilizing fat from storage, transporting it through the bloodstream to tissues that need fuel. But fat cannot simply float freely through your blood. It needs transportation systems. Special proteins called lipoproteins help carry fats throughout your body, moving them to organs and muscles that need energy. This transportation process becomes incredibly important because the way your body moves and uses fat has major consequences for your metabolism, hormones, and even cholesterol levels. This is one reason why people who shift toward very low carbohydrate or ketogenic diets often notice dramatic metabolic changes. If sugar intake drops significantly, the body has no choice but to begin relying more heavily on fat as fuel. Suddenly, stored fat becomes useful again. Energy that was previously locked away begins moving toward muscles and organs that need it. And for many people, something surprising happens. As the body becomes better at mobilizing stored fat, excess fat accumulation in places like the liver may begin to improve. Conditions like fatty liver disease, which are becoming increasingly common around the world, sometimes improve when the body learns to use fat more efficiently instead of constantly storing it. But here's the question no one asks enough. If fat burning is so natural, why do so many people fail to experience it? Why are there people carrying thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of calories stored on their bodies while still feeling exhausted, hungry, and mentally drained every single day? The answer is both simple and deeply misunderstood. It's not always a problem of how much energy you have. It's a problem of whether your body can actually access that energy. Think about it this way. Imagine having a massive savings account filled with money, but somehow being unable to withdraw it when you need it. Technically, the resources are there, but practically, they're unavailable. That is exactly what happens metabolically to many people. And this becomes even more shocking when you understand the numbers. The average person only stores a relatively small amount of readily available sugar energy in the form of blood glucose and glycogen stored in the liver and muscles. Altogether, these sugar reserves may only represent a few thousand calories. But fat storage is an entirely different story. Even a person who is not overweight may carry over 100,000 calories worth of stored energy in body fat. That means your body could theoretically fuel itself for an incredibly long time using stored fat if it can access it efficiently. And this reveals the true biological purpose of fat. Fat was never designed to simply sit on your body and frustrate you every time you look in the mirror. Its original purpose was to serve as a stable, efficient reserve of energy that could keep you functioning during periods when food wasn't immediately available. So then, if someone has excess body fat, shouldn't they automatically have abundant energy? In theory, yes. But reality works differently. For many people, the issue isn't the amount of stored energy, it's metabolic flexibility. The ability to smoothly switch between burning sugar and burning fat depending on what the body needs. And this flexibility may be one of the most important factors in long-term health. Because when your body loses the ability to efficiently burn fat, something dangerous can begin happening silently beneath the surface. Fat starts accumulating in places where it was never meant to be. First, body fat storage may expand, but over time, excess fat can begin infiltrating organs like the liver, pancreas, and even the heart, increasing the risk of serious chronic disease. This is why learning how your body accesses fat isn't just about losing weight. It's about metabolic health, stable energy, hormone balance, disease prevention, and understanding how to stop your body from becoming trapped in a cycle of constant storage without ever truly using what it already has. And now comes the most important question of all. What exactly is blocking your body from accessing fat as fuel in the first place? In the next part, we'll uncover the most common hidden reasons your body may be resisting fat burning, including one mistake that millions of people unknowingly repeat every single day. One of the biggest reasons many people struggle to burn fat has nothing to do with laziness, genetics, or even a lack of discipline. In fact, the problem often begins with something so common that most people never question it. We live in a near constant state of eating. Think about the average day for many people. Breakfast early in the morning, a coffee with sugar shortly after, snacks in between meals, lunch, another snack in the afternoon, something sweet after dinner, maybe even late night eating before bed. Without realizing it, the body is almost continuously receiving signals that food is available. And while this may seem harmless, it creates a major metabolic consequence. Your body has two main operating states. The first is the fed state, when nutrients are actively coming in and your body focuses on digesting, absorbing, and storing energy. The second is the fasting state, when food is no longer arriving and the body begins relying more heavily on stored reserves for fuel. This distinction matters more than most people realize. When your body constantly detects incoming food, especially carbohydrates and sugar, it has very little reason to tap into stored fat. From an evolutionary standpoint, that would make no sense. Why spend stored energy when fresh energy keeps arriving every few hours? Your body is designed for survival. It prefers preserving reserves whenever possible. So if calories are continuously available, especially in small, frequent doses throughout the day, fat burning often remains partially switched off. This is why many people feel trapped. They may be trying hard, eating smaller meals, constantly snacking because they were told it boosts metabolism, yet somehow still struggling with energy crashes, cravings, and stubborn fat that refuses to budge. But here's what often surprises people. The body becomes significantly more willing to access fat when periods of caloric deficit naturally occur. That deficit can happen in two major ways. One is through fasting, where no calories are consumed for a period of time. The other is through intense physical activity, where energy expenditure temporarily exceeds intake. In both situations, your body faces a simple reality. It needs fuel, but incoming energy is limited. And this is where stored fat finally gets invited back into the conversation. For many people, this is one reason intermittent fasting becomes such a powerful tool. Not because it is magic, not because there is something mystical happening inside the body, but because it creates a window where the body finally has a legitimate reason to start using stored energy, and yet food timing is only part of the story. There's another factor that most people rarely consider, even though it can dramatically influence metabolism in surprising ways. Cold exposure. At first, this may sound strange. What could cold weather possibly have to do with burning fat? Quite a lot, actually. To understand why, you first need to understand what a calorie really is. A calorie is fundamentally a measurement of energy. More specifically, it represents energy used for work, including maintaining body temperature. Your body is constantly trying to keep your internal temperature stable. When you are exposed to cold, your body suddenly faces an urgent challenge. It must generate additional heat to protect vital organs and maintain normal physiological function. And generating heat requires energy. The colder the environment becomes, the harder your body has to work. That means more calories are used simply to keep you warm. Think about how physically exhausting prolonged cold can feel. Mountain climbers, winter athletes, or people exposed to harsh climates often burn enormous amounts of energy, not only because of physical exertion, but because their bodies are fighting to preserve temperature. But there's another fascinating layer to this process. Your body contains different types of fat. Most people are familiar with white fat, the type commonly stored around the body. But under certain conditions, especially repeated exposure to cold, some of this fat can begin shifting toward a more metabolically active form, often called brown fat. And brown fat behaves very differently. Instead of mainly storing energy, brown fat specializes in burning energy to generate heat. It essentially acts like an internal furnace. As this adaptation improves, some people notice better circulation, greater cold tolerance, and even steadier energy levels. This is one reason practices like cold showers, ice exposure, or alternating between heat and cold environments have gained so much attention in health communities. While these methods are certainly not miracle solutions, they may help encourage beneficial metabolic adaptations over time. But there's another hidden obstacle that may be even more important than temperature: inflammation. This word gets thrown around constantly in health discussions, but few people truly understand how deeply it affects fat metabolism. Here's the problem. When inflammation remains elevated for long periods, the body becomes less metabolically efficient. It's as though internal communication systems start malfunctioning. Hormones don't signal as effectively. Cells stop responding optimally. Energy production becomes less smooth, and fat metabolism often becomes impaired. One of the biggest misconceptions surrounding body fat is the belief that fat cells are permanently fixed and unchangeable once formed. While fat cells can certainly shrink and expand, inflammation may strongly influence how stubbornly the body holds on to stored fat and how efficiently fat tissue functions. And where does much of this inflammation come from? For many people, it begins with diet. Refined sugars are often blamed, and to some extent for good reason. Highly processed sugars can rapidly spike blood sugar, contribute to insulin problems, and drive metabolic dysfunction when consumed excessively. But there's another dietary factor that often receives less attention than it deserves. Certain processed oils, especially oils repeatedly exposed to high heat during industrial food preparation or frying. When oils are heavily processed or repeatedly heated, compounds may form that contribute to oxidative stress and inflammation inside the body. Over time, this may interfere with insulin sensitivity, metabolic flexibility, and overall health. Now, this doesn't mean every fat is dangerous or that nutrition needs to become overly complicated, but the quality of fats you consume matters. The body responds differently to minimally processed whole food fats than it does to highly processed industrial products repeatedly exposed to heat. And here's why this becomes important for fat burning. Inflammation and insulin resistance often work together. The more inflamed the body becomes, the harder it may be to efficiently access fat stores. Metabolism becomes sluggish, energy feels unstable, cravings increase, and the body may stay stuck in a storage-focused mode instead of a fuel-burning one. But perhaps one of the most overlooked reasons people struggle to burn fat has less to do with food and more to do with something silently controlling almost everything happening inside your body. Your hormones. Because whether we like it or not, hormones are constantly deciding what your metabolism is allowed to do. Why can one teenager seemingly eat endlessly without gaining much weight, while another person in midlife struggles despite making real effort? Why do some women notice dramatic body composition changes during menopause? Why do stress, thyroid function, insulin, and reproductive hormones suddenly seem connected to weight, energy, and cravings? The answer lies in hormonal balance. And among all hormones, there may be one that quietly influences fat burning more than almost any other: insulin. In the next part, we'll uncover why insulin may be the single biggest gatekeeper standing between you and fat burning, and the hidden daily habits that may be keeping it elevated without you even realizing it. If there is one hormone that quietly controls whether your body stores fat or finally begins using it for fuel, it is insulin. Most people think of insulin only in relation to diabetes, blood sugar, or something doctors discuss during routine blood work. But in reality, insulin may be influencing your energy, hunger, body composition, and even your ability to think clearly far more than you realize. Here's something most people never hear. Your body is incredibly intelligent. It does not randomly decide when to burn fat. It constantly evaluates the environment around you and asks a simple question: are we in a moment of abundance, or are we in a moment where stored energy may be needed? Insulin helps answer that question. Every time you eat, especially foods rich in refined carbohydrates or sugar, blood glucose begins rising. In response, your pancreas releases insulin. Think of insulin as a messenger carrying instructions. Its job is to help move glucose out of the bloodstream and into cells where it can either be used immediately or stored for later. In healthy amounts, insulin is essential. You literally could not survive without it. The problem begins when insulin stays elevated too often for too long. Because insulin doesn't just help store sugar, it also sends a powerful signal that tells the body something extremely important. Energy is available right now, so there is less need to access stored fat. Imagine trying to withdraw money from your savings account while fresh cash keeps being deposited every hour. Your body sees little reason to touch reserves, and over time, this pattern can quietly reduce your metabolic flexibility, the ability to switch smoothly between burning sugar and burning fat. This becomes especially problematic when insulin resistance develops. At first, insulin resistance sounds complicated, but the concept is actually simple. Imagine knocking on a door repeatedly until eventually the person inside stops responding. Your cells begin responding less efficiently to insulin's signal. The body notices this and compensates by producing even more insulin to get the same job done. Now you have a problem. Higher insulin levels make it increasingly difficult for the body to efficiently use stored fat. Blood sugar becomes harder to control. Energy starts fluctuating. Hunger intensifies. Cravings become more aggressive. Weight gain often accelerates, particularly around the abdomen. And perhaps most frustrating of all, many people blame themselves. They think they simply lack willpower, but sometimes what they are fighting is a biology problem, not a motivation problem. This is one reason two people can follow similar diets and experience completely different outcomes. Hormonal health changes the rules of the game. For example, during adolescence, naturally, higher levels of anabolic hormones often make fat utilization more efficient. Younger bodies tend to recover faster, regulate energy more smoothly, and tolerate dietary mistakes better. But later in life, things can shift. Women entering menopause may experience hormonal transitions that influence body fat distribution, insulin sensitivity, and metabolism. Thyroid imbalances can quietly slow metabolic activity. Chronic stress can distort hormone signaling in ways many people never connect to weight gain. And this brings us to another hidden factor many people overlook completely: food intolerances. When most people hear the words food allergy, they imagine dramatic symptoms, swelling, severe reactions, obvious digestive distress. And yes, true allergies can be serious and unmistakable. But food intolerances are often much quieter. In many cases, they don't announce themselves loudly. Instead, they quietly create chronic irritation inside the body. Maybe it's bloating after certain meals, brain fog, digestive discomfort, fatigue, skin issues, strange inflammation that seems impossible to explain. Sometimes the issue comes from difficulty digesting specific substances. A classic example is lactose intolerance, where the body struggles to break down lactose due to low levels of the enzyme lactase. Others may struggle with certain fibers, sugars like fructose, or highly processed foods that overwhelm digestion. At first glance, this may not seem connected to fat burning, but here's why it matters. When your body repeatedly reacts negatively to foods it struggles to process, inflammation increases. And as we discussed earlier, inflammation interferes with metabolic flexibility. The body becomes less efficient. Digestion consumes more resources, stress signaling increases, hormonal balance becomes harder to maintain, and over time, this may indirectly make fat metabolism much more difficult. This is why paying attention to how foods actually make you feel matters more than blindly following dietary trends. The perfect diet on paper means very little if your body struggles to tolerate it. But there's another piece of the puzzle hiding in plain sight, one that many people underestimate because the word itself sounds small: micronutrients. You've probably heard of macronutrients, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. These are the big players that make up most of what we eat. Micronutrients, however, are the smaller compounds your body desperately depends on behind the scenes. We're talking about vitamins, minerals, and essential nutrients that help power thousands of metabolic reactions every single second. And here's what most people don't realize. Your metabolism is not powered by calories alone. It is powered by chemistry. Imagine trying to build a house with endless piles of bricks but no tools. That's what happens when calories are abundant but critical nutrients are missing. Take chromium, for example. This trace mineral may help support healthy blood sugar regulation. When levels are insufficient, insulin function may become less efficient, increasing the risk of metabolic dysfunction. B vitamins play another major role. These nutrients are heavily involved in cellular energy production. Low levels may contribute to poor concentration, and inefficient energy metabolism. Omega-3 fatty acids also deserve attention. Since the body cannot produce them efficiently on its own, they must come from food or supplementation. They play important roles in inflammation, balance, brain health, and cellular function. And the truth is, deficiencies are far more common than many people assume. You can technically consume plenty of calories and still be undernourished at a metabolic level. This creates a frustrating cycle. Low nutrients lead to low energy. Low energy reduces movement. Reduced movement affects metabolic health. Poor metabolism increases cravings. Cravings drive lower quality food choices. And before long, the body feels stuck. But even if nutrition improves, there's another surprising reason. Fat burning may still struggle. The way you eat, not just what you eat, but how consistently you eat. Modern eating habits are often chaotic. One day, breakfast is skipped. The next day, there are snacks every hour. Dinner happens at 6 p.m. one night and midnight the next. Fasting starts and stops randomly, And while flexibility has value, biology also appreciates rhythm. Your body operates on patterns. Digestive hormones follow schedules. Metabolic systems adapt to predictable routines. Enzyme production often becomes more efficient when eating habits are consistent. This doesn't mean life needs to become rigid or obsessive, but especially in the early stages of improving metabolic flexibility, consistency matters more than people think. If intermittent fasting helps you, consistency often works better than randomness. If certain meals feel energizing, stability may outperform constantly changing diets every week because your body learns, it adapts, and when it begins trusting predictable signals, metabolic efficiency often improves. But there is one hidden factor that may sabotage everything we've discussed so far, and most people experience it every single day without realizing how powerful it truly is. Blood sugar instability. And once you understand what fluctuating blood sugar is secretly doing to your metabolism, you may never look at cravings, energy crashes, or stubborn fat the same way again.